But the Sankirtan Yagya is easy and sublime. It's simply chanting Hare Krishna. Just like every Saturday we go out on the streets in Seattle and we perform Sankirtan Yagya. Sankirtan means congregational chanting. The more the merrier. The more people the merrier. So last week we had 30 people. But this next Saturday, we want 100 people to come out for Harinam Sankirtan. You going to come out? You're going to come out? Okay. You going to come? You're going to come? Okay, good. We need 100 people, right, to come out. Because next month, for Gaur Purnima, we need 200 people. So this is practice, right? So, in this age of Kali, people are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtan Yagya. By performance of Yagya, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation, and all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the general necessity of present-day society. So you see the correlation between eating sanctified food and developing spiritual intelligence to understand spiritual knowledge. So it says, by performance of yajna, one's eatables or edibles become sanctified, purified, saintly, and therefore, by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's existence becomes purified, and by purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. And then, when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path to liberation, or Krishna consciousness. And all of these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society. So, what you eat will determine who you are. So if you eat burgers and dogs, you end up becoming a dog. And if you eat Mahaprasadam, you go back to Godhead. Okay. So this is very practical. We all exist on food grains. They're produced by rains. Rains are produced by yagyas. Yagyas are produced by regulated activities of the people in society. Therefore, that regulation, living according to the rules and regulations of spiritual life, are fundamental. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. In other words, all our past sins become purified by regularly eating prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna. So when the person is sick, they receive a diet and they receive medicine. So the diet is prasadam and the medicine is chanting Hare Krishna. That'll cure your disease of birth. What's the disease? Birth, death, old age, and disease. Right. So this is 3rd chapter, verse 14. So a person who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections. Infections meaning sinful activities and the sinful results or karma that go with them, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs. You want to take birth as a dog or a pig in the next life? Continue performing sinful actions now. And they suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. So every day we get a vaccination. Right. But the vaccination is eating prasadam, not getting a needle in the body, right? So by eating prasadam, now everything is not prasadam. Something cooked in the restaurant by Ahmed is not prasadam, right? Even if it's cooked by Raj, it's still not prasadam. It has not only has to be cooked, it has to be offered to Krishna, and Krishna will only accept those things that he likes. So, patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam, yome bhakta prayasti, a leaf, water, fruit, and flower. So, grains, vegetables, fruits, and ghee, and milk, yogurt, and nuts. Those are the things that Krishna will accept. Okay, so now we have to cultivate. So Rishashinga was the only person that the Brahmins knew who was free of sin. He was like 16 years old. He had never seen a woman in his life, and he had never committed any sinful activity. He never had a sinful thought. So his father protected him like that. Yes, in the Ramayana. So then the king decided, okay, we got to get this boy somehow or other. So what did he do? He dressed up his daughter and all her maidservants as sannyasis, put them on a boat, and they went up the river, up into the mountain. And the boat docked right near the ashram of Rishashinga and his father. Now, it so happened, the king had his spies, so it happened that the father had left on some trip. He wasn't there. The boy was alone. So now, he hears these happy noises, and people are laughing, and they're singing. And, you know, you get lonely. His whole life he was alone with his father, so it was a very rare thing that sometimes some saintly people would come and visit. It was a very rare thing to have a visit, and the boy is there alone. Father's not even there. So he runs down to the dock, and here are these beautiful sannyasis. See, he had never seen a woman, so he didn't know that they were women. He thought they were men. And they were dressed in saffron, and they had dandas and things. So they get off the boat, and he greets them as if they're sannyasis. So he hugs them, thinking they're men. When he hugs each one, he feels something that he's never felt before. But he doesn't know what it is. He feels some attraction, but he doesn't know what it is. And he's very happy, and they spend a good part of the day together. And it was extremely enjoyable for him. But then they said, we have to leave, because they knew the father was going to come back. And he would get extremely angry. He would recognize who they were and what they were trying to do. So they leave, and the boy said, don't leave, my father's going to come. We can, spend a couple of days together. No, they said, we have to leave. We have to go back to our kingdom. But we'll come back again. And they leave. And he feels, some nostalgic feeling that, he doesn't want them to leave. He's never felt this before. And he feels very attracted to them, but he doesn't understand why. So he just mentions to his father that some sannyasis had come, and the father doesn't think anything about it. So again, the father leaves another time. Again, the girls come back. And this time they convince him to come with them for a few days. He said, no, I can't do that. I have to ask permission of my father. And they said, no, it's okay. Our father will talk to your father. Don't worry, So they convince him. And now he goes down in the boat, and he comes to this kingdom. He's never seen civilization before like this. And he's just like shocked. And he meets the king, and the king explains to him, that these are not sannyasis, they're women. And boy has never seen women before. And then he begins to understand why he felt certain attraction. Eventually the king says, you should marry my daughter. He said, but first you have to perform this sacrifice, So he said, sure, I can do that. That's not a problem. He was trained to do that, But before anything happens, his father comes, and he's very, very upset. And the king, apologizes and begs him. He said, look, we're having a serious problem here. People are going to die unless we have some rain. So finally the father agrees. The boy does the yajna. Rain comes, and then the king convinces his father, let him marry my daughter. So, moral of the story, the father sequestered the boy, never let him know what a woman was, therefore he succumbed. Without knowing, he felt natural attraction. Therefore, this mantra says, Vidyam cha yas yasta vedo bayam saha avidyaya miritum tirtva vidyayam ritamasya. Only one who can learn the process of ignorance and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So, when you read Prabhupada's purports, he gives you both sides. He doesn't just give one side, he gives both sides. Like, for example, if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, whole sections of it he explains Mayavad philosophy and he keeps pointing out the fault in it. So you don't have to go to a Mayavadi's ashram and stay there and listen to his lectures to figure out what Mayavad philosophy is. You just read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll understand exactly what it is. And you're forewarned, right? The same thing with material life. He explains the cause of material life. He explains why people remain in material life, why they stay in the cycle of repeated birth and death, life after life, and suffer unnecessarily. In fact, there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Anarthapasamam Sakshad. It says that suffering is unnecessary. It's only due to people's ignorance that they suffer. If they get enlightened, there's no more suffering. This is a very beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam. And it is Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 7th chapter, 6th verse. Anarthapasamam Sakshat, Bhakti Yoga Mahoksaje, Lokaisya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, that means they're not necessary at all. You're not obliged to suffer, can be directly mitigated, can be gotten rid of right away or healed by the linking process of devotional service, bhakti. But the mass of people do not know this. And therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature which is in relation to the supreme truth. Now, what does this mean? This means that modern education trains people to continue suffering. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Today there was a headline in the news that you can heal cancer and Alzheimer's by having more sexual activity. Do you believe that? There's doctors' reports. It's in the news. If you look at the news today, it's a big headline. Totally misleading, you see. So people are dumbed down by modern education, and the scientists, who are sort of the modern gurus, they are cooperating. They're purposely giving out false information. You see. So how do you expect the mass of people to know any better? They're not getting any proper information. And they're getting it from the modern gurus, the scientists. You know, people say, oh, he's a scientist, he knows what he's talking about. Right? So, therefore, unless you're trained to recognize agyan, ignorance, just like Rishi Singha, you can become a victim of it. Because you don't know. You don't know how to recognize it. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, since the creation of the material world, everyone has been trying to attain a permanent life. But the laws of nature are so cruel that no one has been able to avoid the hand of death. No one wants to die, nor does anyone want to become old or diseased. The law of nature, however, does not allow anyone immunity from old age, disease, or death. Now, what are they saying in Silicon Valley? What? and look like you. So that they're going to make you immortal by downloading your brain onto a hard disk and put it into a robot that looks like you, right?
And not only that, even parts of the body can not be made of biological matter, but made of metal. So if there is some accident or something, you can just replace it as a human.
Right. You get spare part, like Napa or Shucks. You go in and you need a new carburetor. You get a new liver. You get a metal liver. Yeah.
One way it's very good thing. For
Why?
because they will understand, they will go towards like, they are not body, they are thinking they are mind.
No, but wait a minute. See, there's something you don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Frankenstein? Okay, you know what the story of Frankenstein is?
Yeah, that man and they put some lightning in him and then that body comes to life.
No, but wait a minute. Go ahead.
Frankenstein is a scientist and he collects the body parts from various corpses and then tries to animate them and he ends up getting a monster.
Well, the problem is, what kind of mind did he put into the reanimated dead man? He put the mind of a bad person. He put the mind of a bad person. You see. So this is what you don't understand about this. They're going to make robots with killer, the mentality of an ISIS or Al Qaeda guy, and they're going to reproduce them so that there's like 500,000 of them in the new Chinese army. And they're going to invade India. And you can shoot them, they don't die. You have to blow them up to stop them. But every time you blow one up, they just make another. It's like in the United States. They won World War II because America was not bombed. So therefore, they were producing massive numbers of tanks. They, like Boeing, they stopped making commercial jets. They just made airplanes for the United States Army. McDonnell's, Douglas, they just made bombers and jets, And they sequestered whole factories and just made bombs. They stopped everything and put it on a war production. That's why they won the war. They blockaded Germany eventually, so they couldn't get any raw materials. They couldn't get oil. They couldn't get heavy metals and things. You use all these things to make bombs. They couldn't get food. What did they do? They recycled stool to feed the people. Yeah. They're very brilliant people. They recycled stool, human stool, purified it, and fed it back to the people. Because they couldn't import anything. Not in the beginning of the war, but near the end, they completely blockaded Germany. But America was producing jets, tanks, bullets, machine guns, all kinds of weapons. Because when you have an army, unless you can supply the army, it's useless. So they supplied Russia, they supplied England, they supplied North Africa, the French troops in North Africa. That's why they were able to eventually defeat Germany, because American industry went on a war production scale, a war production schedule. And by the way, the workers, most of them were women, because most of the men were in the army. The women are told, if you say one word about what we're doing in the factory, we will execute you. So when there's war, it's a whole different structure in the country. When they're told, just normal American workers, they say, if you say one word about what's going on in this factory, we will execute you. This is the United States. What did they do to the Japanese? They made concentration camps, rounded up the Japanese and put them in concentration camps in California. But they didn't do it for the German Americans, and they didn't do it for the Italian Americans. They were thinking about doing it, but there were so many German and Italian Americans they thought twice about it. And most of them were loyal. But there were disloyal German and Italian Americans that were supporting Germany or Italy, you see. So, they make promises, right? Oh, the robots are going to, improve society. But they can make Frankenstein type of robots. They can make any type of robot they want. They put the mentality that they want into the robot.
They cannot do anything good things because they are, whatever they think, it's the seed is greed.
Yes.
So if the seed is greed, they cannot go in the right direction at all.
Exactly right. So therefore, the material miseries that we're experiencing are unnecessary. It's only due to ignorance, our own ignorance. And you can see it by all these crazy announcements they make on the news, promising people, you can heal cancer by engaging in illicit activities. You can, don't worry about the future, we'll make you immortal. We'll make an artificial heart, artificial liver, artificial gallbladder, artificial brain. And it's all kinds of crazy statements, right? And people believe it. See, this is not new. They did it in the 1930s also. In the 1930s, they already started mapping the brain. And they claimed that they could heal mental sickness by doing an operation on the brain. So who believed it? Joseph Kennedy, the father of the Kennedys. One of his daughters was somewhat autistic. So he let her go and got an operation. The rest of her life, she was a vegetable. She became gaga. I mean, her strange behavior stopped, but she stopped interacting with people. She became a vegetable. Because they went into their brain, they thought they knew what they were doing, they screwed up her brain. And they could do it because they had a lot of money. So they paid for that operation with these top doctors, and they turned her into a vegetable. You see. So this is the problem. No one wants to die, nor does anyone want to become old or diseased. The law of nature, however, does not allow anyone immunity from old age, disease, or death, nor has the advancement of material knowledge solved these problems. Material science can discover the nuclear bomb to accelerate the process of death, but it cannot discover anything that can protect man from the cruel hands of old age, disease, and death. So Prabhupada said, the only thing the scientists have done is create greater and greater weapons to kill more and more people faster. They haven't stopped people from dying. Just as many people are dying today as before. They say, oh, they're living longer. They're not living longer. They lived longer before. And if you count all the different things like war and disease, just like now there's a new disease, the Zika. There's a new disease. They have no vaccine, nothing for it, and it's spreading all over the place, right? So they get rid of one disease. We defeated malaria, but now there's Zika. How are you going to defeat that? Yeah, same mosquito. It's just another name, Instead of malaria, it's called Zika,
I asked my father, what was different now and then. So he said that earlier people, we never heard people are dying in an accident.
Oh.
And nowadays, we heard that more.
More accidents. In India is terrible.
More vehicles to bring all those things.
Yeah. More death. Yeah. Amazing. Listen, every year in the United States, between 150 and 300,000 people die due to medical mistakes in hospitals, and just like you heard, what's her name? Joan Waters, right? The comedian. Rivers, yeah, Joan Rivers. She was always getting, plastic surgery, right? So she had to get an adjustment or something. She goes into a very high-end plastic surgeon in New York City. He made a mistake and killed her, right? You know how many people die like that every year in the United States because of medical mistakes? More people in 1 year than 5 years of the Vietnam War. 5 years of Vietnam War, 55,000 American soldiers died. 1 year in the United States, due to medical mistakes, over 150,000 and sometimes up to 300,000 people are killed by medical mistakes. Right? So, the death rate has not gone down. If anything, it's increasing. Well, they make you sign a paper, yeah. 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 You've had that experience, yeah. Now, what we need to do, see, you ever see a baseball card? You know what a baseball card is? They have the picture of the baseball player, and they have his batting average. You know, he's like 360 for 2014. That's good, you know. If it's 140, they get rid of him, right? They should have baseball cards for oncologists, cancer doctors, dentists, you know, all these people. You would be surprised with their batting average, what their average is. For cancer, 5% success, 95% failure. If you count 5 years after an operation, you'll see it'll end up 95% failures. But they won't publicize that. No. They do it for baseball players, but not for doctors. Huh? Well, you see, so this whole thing is a hoax, and it's all based on keeping people stupid, ignorant. Right? Wanting to, from the Puranas, we learn of the activities of Hiranyakashipu, a king who was very much advanced materially. Wanting to conquer cruel death by his material acquisitions and the strength of his nescience, his ignorance, he underwent a type of meditation so severe that the inhabitants of all the planetary systems became disturbed by his mystic powers. He forced the creator of the universe, the demigod Brahma, to come down to him. He then asked Brahma for the benediction of becoming Amara, immortal, no Mara, by which one does not die. Brahma said that he could not award the benediction because even he, the material creator who rules all planets, is not Amara. Only Shiva and, of course, Vishnu are Amara. Brahma is not Amara. See, Shiva is also present in Vaikuntha. It's called Sadashiva. And he expands in the material world, and then he withdraws. But there's billions of Shivas, just like there's billions of Vishnus. So Shiva Tattva is it's marginally transcendental. It's complicated, because Shiva's on both sides, in Vaikuntha and the material world. Oh yeah, definitely. He is Amara. Brahma is not. Yeah. No. Brahma said that he could not award the benediction because even he, the material creator who rules all planets, is not Amara. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8:17, Brahma lives a long time, but that does not mean he is immortal. Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu means soft bed. This cunning gentleman, Hiranyakashipu, was interested in these two things, money and women, and he wanted to enjoy them by becoming immortal. Doesn't everyone? Doesn't Sheikh Abdul Hamid, whatever his name is, they want to, want to become immortal so he can enjoy his 160 wives? Everybody. And he wanted to enjoy them by becoming immortal. He asked from Brahma many benedictions in hopes of indirectly fulfilling his desire to become immortal. Since Brahma told him that he could not grant the gift of immortality, Hiranyakashipu requested that he not be killed by any man, animal, god, or any other living being within the 8,400,000 species. He also asked that he not die on land, in the air or water, or by any weapon. In this way, Hiranyakashipu foolishly thought these guarantees would save him from death. But he could never realize that Nrsingadev is half man, half lion. He's not an animal, he's not human. And he was killed by the nails. It's not a weapon. It's natural nails, right? And he was killed at twilight, right between daytime and night. So it wasn't day, it wasn't night. And he was not killed in the air or the land or the sea. He was killed on the lap of Nrsingadev. So, you see? Yeah. Yeah. So he was, as smart as he was fooled. You see? Why? Because Krishna says, Matak Smitir Jnanam Apahanam Cha. From me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So when the demons are so smart, Krishna gives them forgetfulness. Just like Hitler, Krishna gave him forgetfulness. He decided to invade Russia, even though he had a peace treaty with Russia and Stalin. So he invades Russia, and before he finishes conquering Russia, he decides to invade England. So now he's fighting on two fronts, the Eastern Front and the Western Front. The whole Russian thing bogged down in the same way that Napoleon was defeated, because he invaded Russia in the spring, but because it was very slow going, his army got bogged down in the Russian winter, and everyone died. Right? Same thing happened with Hitler and the Germans, because Stalin kept throwing one wave of soldiers after another. 20 million Russian soldiers died in World War II. 20 million! And 1 million German soldiers died in the Eastern Front in Russia. It was a catastrophe for Germany. And at the same time, he attacked England. It looked at one point that he was winning on both, and then he lost in the Eastern Front. It was a devastating defeat. And then eventually he lost on the Western Front, then they collapsed. And he was invaded by the Russian army and the American allies. Invaded. Huh? No, if it wasn't for America, they would have lost the war. Russians were not able to resupply their tanks and guns. They had to receive all that stuff from America. Yeah. Okay, so in this way, Hiranyakashipu foolishly thought these guarantees would save him from death. Ultimately, however, although Brahma granted him all these benedictions, he was killed by the personality of Godhead in the form of Nrsinga, the Lord's half-lion, half-man incarnation. And no weapon was used to kill him, for he was killed by the Lord's nails. Nor was he killed on the land, in the air, or in the water, for he was killed on the lap of that wonderful living being, Nrsinga, who was beyond his conception. The whole point here is that even Hiranyakashipu, the most powerful of materialists, could not become deathless by his various plans. What then can be accomplished by the tiny Hiranyakashipus of today, whose plans are throttled from moment to moment? Throttle meaning defeated from moment to moment. Isopanisad instructs us not to make one-sided attempts to win the struggle for existence. In other words, just don't try by manipulating the material nature to defeat birth and death, because you're not going to succeed. If Hiranyakashipu didn't succeed, if Ravana didn't succeed, if Kamsa didn't succeed, you're definitely not going to, or we're definitely not going to succeed, right? Because they were much better than us. Sri Isopanisad instructs us not to make one-sided attempts to win the struggle for existence. Everyone is struggling hard for existence, but the laws of material nature are so hard and fast that they do not allow anyone to surpass them. In order to attain a permanent life, one must be prepared to go back to Godhead. The process by which one goes back to Godhead is a different branch of knowledge. And it has to be learned from revealed Vedic scriptures such as the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. To become happy in this life and attain a permanent blissful life after leaving this material body, one must study this sacred literature and obtain transcendental knowledge. The conditioned living being has forgotten his eternal relationship with God and has mistakenly accepted the temporary place of his birth as all in all. The Lord has kindly delivered the above-mentioned scriptures in India and other scriptures in other countries to remind the forgetful human being that his home is not here in this material world. The living being is a spiritual entity, and he can be happy only by returning to his spiritual home. From his kingdom, the personality of Godhead sends his bona fide servants to propagate this message by which one can return to Godhead, and sometimes the Lord comes himself to do this work. Since all living beings are his beloved sons, his parts and parcels, God is more sorry than we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition. So this is confidential knowledge now. Krishna is more sorry than we are for our suffering. He's more sorry than we are. Just like a father or a mother is more sorry than the son or daughter for their suffering. They say, oh my God, I put this child in the world, and look how much they're suffering. You know, and it's my fault. Maybe I didn't train them properly. And they're suffering terribly. You see? And same way, Krishna is more concerned about our suffering than we are. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter. Intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and engage themselves in the culture of vidya, or transcendental knowledge. There was once a man, he died, and he went before Yamaraj. He said, so why didn't you tell me this was going to happen to me? Yamaraj said, what? What do you mean? He said, you didn't give me any notice. He said, I didn't give you any notice. Don't you remember those teeth that were falling out? How about your eyesight? It started degrading. Do you remember that? How about the high BP that you had? How about those aches and pains in your back? Every time you bend down, you couldn't bend back up again. They had to carry you to the chiropractor to straighten out your back. So what about all that? You know, how about the first heart attack you had? How about the second heart attack you had? How about the kidney dialysis you were having? He said, oh, was that to warn me? And no, that was to reward you. Idiot. You had plenty of warnings. Still you didn't listen. You were thinking, I'm going to live forever. You know, I'll live forever on kidney dialysis. So, intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and engage themselves in the culture of vidya, or knowledge, or transcendental knowledge. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge. It's better than the devas, because too much happiness on the deva lokas. It's better than the pitris and the lower planets, because it's too much suffering there. So here, a little suffering, little happiness. It's mixed. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge. And a human being who does not take advantage of this opportunity is called a Naradama, the lowest of human beings. So, the path of avidya, or advancement of material knowledge for sense gratification, is the path of repeated birth and death. As he exists spiritually, the living entity has no birth or death. Birth and death apply to the outward covering of the spirit soul, the body, Death is compared to the taking off, and birth to the putting on of outward garments. Foolish human beings who are grossly absorbed in the culture of avidya, nescience, do not mind this cruel process. Look at that, they don't mind. That means they're intoxicated, completely unconscious. Enamored with the beauty of the illusory energy, they undergo the same miseries repeatedly and do not learn any lessons from the laws of nature. Therefore, the culture of vidya, or transcendental knowledge, is essential for the human being. Sense enjoyment in the diseased material condition must be restricted as far as possible. Unrestricted sense enjoyment in this bodily condition is the path of ignorance and death. Well, just read the newspaper. Just look at the news. What are they glorifying? They're glorifying Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, Miley Cyrus, this movie star, that movie star. What about them? They're glorifying their sense gratification. Oh, he has this wife, but he has these girlfriends. Just like in the news, there was an article about Stump for Trump's previous wife, Ivana. There was an interview, and she said, I have 3 boyfriends. She's 65 years old. It's crazy. As if that's news, right? But yet people, they're interested in finding out about her boyfriends, Huh? Yes. They're not glorifying it. Glorifying it.
When I came here for the first, my friend was there, American friend, and we were just having lunch together, and he said that I'm going to some place. I asked him why you are going. I'm going for my mother's marriage. I was shocked to listen.
How old was his mother?
Well, she was in 60, like he was 30s, and her mother was like 50 or 60.
Yeah.
So then he told me, he looked at my face, and she's my stepmother.
Oh, okay. So she was already married before she married his father. And now she divorced the father and is marrying somebody else. Yeah.
We have never heard.
You never heard anything like that, right? Yeah.
In the same reference to someone mentioned that if they do the kids before the marriage, so the kids can be used to arrange the chairs in their marriage.
Someone told you that? That was a joke? That's a sick joke. Very sick joke. Yeah.
This comes from Europe and USA.
Yeah. There's no respect anymore. Everything's ridiculous. Unrestricted sense enjoyment in this bodily condition is the path of ignorance and death. The living entities are not without spiritual senses. Every living being in his original spiritual form has all the senses which are now materially manifested, being covered by the material body and mind. So our spiritual senses are covered by this body, right? So they're not functioning right now. Only the material senses are functioning. But if you become Krishna conscious, you purify the material senses, and then it reactivates the spiritual senses. The activities of the material senses are perverted reflections of the activities of the original spiritual senses. In his diseased condition, the spirit soul engages in material activities under the material covering. Real sense enjoyment is possible only when the disease of materialism is removed. In our pure spiritual form, free from all material contamination, real enjoyment of the senses is possible. A patient must regain his health before he can truly enjoy sense pleasure again. Thus, the aim of human life should not be to enjoy perverted sense enjoyment, but to cure the material disease. Aggravation of the material disease is no sign of knowledge, but a sign of avidya, ignorance. For good health, a person should not increase his fever from 105 degrees to 107 degrees, but should reduce his temperature to the normal 98.6. So one time there was a very rich lady, and she had a servant, a poor servant lady. So one day, the servant got sick. She had a temperature, So they called a doctor. So the doctor came, and the rich lady was there, and the doctor, stuck the thermometer in her mouth. He said, say ah. So she said ah, and he put the thermometer in her mouth. He said, now close your mouth, like that. And then he took the thermometer out. He looked at it. Said, oh my God, he said, you have 102 degrees. So the rich lady was looking at it. He said, take mine. So he said, say ah. He said, ah. And he put it in there, right? He said, no, he said, yours is 99. She said, what? Hers is higher than mine? I want you to increase my temperature. She cannot have more than me. I'm the rich lady here. She's the poor lady. See how crazy people are? Because she had less than a poor lady, she wanted the doctor to increase her. Huh? Well, she wants to always be better than her maidservant, right? So Prabhupada tells this story to say that what's happening today in society is that instead of reducing the temperature, they're purposely increasing the temperature, right? Through all these things we were talking about, right? Increasing the sense, glorifying the sense gratification, making it look attractive, and then convincing people that they should have more sense gratification. So that doesn't reduce the fever, that increases the fever. That should be the aim of human life. In other words, to reduce the temperature to normal, not increase it. The modern trend of material civilization is to increase the temperature of the feverish material condition, which has reached the point of 107 degrees. You die at 107 degrees if it stays there, in the form of atomic energy. Meanwhile, the foolish politicians are crying that at any moment the world may go to hell. That is the result of the advancement of material knowledge and the neglect of the most important part of life, the culture of spiritual knowledge. Sri Isopanisad herein warns that we must not follow this dangerous path leading to death. On the contrary, we must develop the culture of spiritual knowledge so that we may become completely free from the cruel hands of death. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
In many cases, we don't have choice.
Who said that? Which rascal said that?
Like, for example, medical insurance is there. And so they have a lot of things which we don't like, but we have to follow them.
Oh, who said you have to follow it?
Otherwise,
Why, are you in prison or something? You're handcuffed or what?
for example, if you go to hospital
Yeah.
and we tell the doctor, okay, the patient needs more days to get care at hospital, in hospital. But they say that, okay, no, you can take care at home. You don't see it because the insurance doesn't allow you to do this.
Yeah.
So this is one example. Similarly, there are many things. Either you walk away from those things.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did your ancestors have medical insurance? No. Did they live? Did they have children? Right? So how did they do it without medical insurance, without these big hospitals? How did they live and reproduce and raise their kids? And then their kids got married and they also had kids. And then all of a sudden you came with your medical insurance. How did they do it? I mean, how many generations have there been in India? Hundreds and thousands of generations in the past. How did they live?
Medical insurance started only 2 generations.
Not even.
No, awesome. For example, what I have seen in my family basically, my grandfather had a lot of children, and my grandmother told me that 6, 7, 5 children died basically. So that was a normal thing.
How many kids did they have?
They have 8.
So 5 of them died.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so that was a trend. They didn't knew that the kid will survive after like some time, or if they were not sure of those things.
Right.
So,
How come there's so many Indians if so many kids die? 1 billion Indians. They had 35 billion kids and only 1 billion survived? Or, you know, that's not a normal thing. 5 out of 8 die. You wouldn't have 1 billion Indians if that was a normal thing. All right, let's do a little survey. How many kids did your grandfather have?
My grandfather?
Yeah. One. How about your father? Your father, how many children did he have?
I was
One, okay. How about your great-grandfather? Huh? How about your great-grandfather? I know my grandfather on my mother's side, he had like, I think he had 13 kids. 13 kids.
earlier there was no birth control system, so people had birth.
No, what do you mean there's no birth control? Of course there was birth control if they wanted. Birth control is you abstain. That's birth control. Yeah. No, people had, you know, especially if they're living on farms, they could have large families and feed them, no problem. In fact, more kids the better. It's more workers in the fields.
China is also going to order the culture now again.
Well, they're going to increase again. Anyway, you wouldn't have 1 billion people in India if there was such a big death rate amongst children. You had 11 kids, of course. Did any of them die? Maybe 1 or 2, you know. How about you?
Maternal grandfather 4, parental grandfather 4.
4.
4 each.
4 each. Okay. How about you?
7, my maternal grandfather.
See? Well, how about you, Prabhu?
5.
so what they are telling, they are life basically. They have not inquired like how many died basically. So generally we don't ask this question to our grandparents.
Why? My wife and I had 7 kids. 1 of them died. Right. And we have 6 grandchildren. None of them have died. Yeah. So, no, I mean, you should take care. I mean, and I've never had medical insurance. Never. I'm not kidding you. Never had medical insurance. We raised all our kids without medical insurance. What? No. Nothing. Never had any type of insurance. No life insurance. Well, we do have life insurance. Chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here and continue tomorrow. This is a very long purport. It's got another page and a half, so we'll stop. Yes?
God is more sorry.
What?
One of the God is more sorry.
God is more what?
More sorry than more sorry.
Oh yeah, God is more sorry than we are about our suffering. God is more sorry than we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition. That means He feels more bad than we do about our suffering than we do.
Is it due to like we are not using our
No, just like you, if you saw, I'll give you a real example. I have a cousin back in Philadelphia. He's a lawyer. He's a very well-educated guy. He has a lot of money. And he had, you know, a number of children. One of his kids got blood cancer, leukemia. He spent so much money, everything. Went this doctor, that doctor. He lost the child. He's never recovered from it. It's like, you know, it's like a big hole in his heart. He's never recovered from it. So, the father suffers more than the kid because of his love for the child and the fact that he can't do anything. So Krishna feels more than we do for our suffering. That's why he sends Prabhupada, he sends Balaji, he sends so many people to try and save us. If he didn't care, he wouldn't send anybody. He wouldn't speak the Bhagavad Gita. Right? He wouldn't have the Vedas if he didn't care. He's doing everything to try and get us to wake up and realize all this suffering is unnecessary. It's only due to ignorance. Oh, by the way, when we become Krishna conscious, we begin to feel the suffering of society, and we feel obligated to do something about it, like Prabhupada. But when we're selfish, enjoying our own sense gratification, we don't care. If someone comes and says, give me some food, and say, get out of here. It's my house. Get out of here. Right. But when you become Krishna conscious, you begin to feel. And there's a very wonderful verse in the 6th chapter that says, he is a perfect yogi who by comparison to his own self sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. One who is a Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. So, when you become a devotee, a real, devotee, you begin to feel the misery of other people, and then you feel obligated to do something to help them. So, you decide to come out on Harinam Sankirtan, distribute burritos and Prabhupada's books, and chant Hare Krishna loudly so they can hear it. Who's coming? You're gonna come? Okay. Saturday, you're gonna come? You're not raising your hand. You didn't raise it high enough. Oh, okay. That's good. Haribol. Yeah. Okay. If. That's a big if. No, don't say if. You say, I will. No, but you will. You will, because you feel obliged to come and help humanity by distributing books and prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna and dancing in ecstasy. Yes? Well, let's say you are hungry and you're walking up and down University Avenue, and a devotee with a big smile comes up to you and says, Hare Krishna, here's a burrito. How would you feel? Would you feel happy that someone cares about you? Now you understand. That's what we do. Okay, Haribol. All glories to Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yeah. No, he's